Thank you, thank you, thank you. Turn, if I didn't love you any more than I already do, it's like after that, I'm so proud of you. Yeah, I am. I was smiling the entire time, and I was feeling it. I could feel that pulse of vibration like going through my body and certain things that you would touch upon. And when you were at your most vulnerable, like I was just feeling all of it. So I know the majority of us were also feeling it. So thank you. Check it out. I've also been speaking more. So this is probably, I don't know, a dozen or so times that I've been speaking my truth and sharing my story of healing. Let me start by telling a funny little story. Recently, I was at the grocery store in Edmond, Natural Grocers on 33rd Street, and I proceeded to lose my shit over vegan tamales. Vegan tamales. That's right. And it was over whether or not they were gluten-free. And so it all culminated with despair and tears. And an hour later, I'm still pacing up and down the aisles. But I've struggled over the past 7 years with leaky gut and irritable bowel syndrome. And it doesn't matter what food I put in my body, my ability to assimilate the nutrients and to digest just hasn't been there for whatever reason. And so on this day, I was already feeling a little emotional, vulnerable. I had a difficult day at work. Headed to my parents' house, and on the way to their house, I decided to make a pit stop in Natural Grocers. I'm just going to whip up something easy, something small. Well, I start feeling sorry for myself. The old stories start coming up. The pity party starts happening. I'm pacing. There are tears. I find myself to the frozen food section, and there are these vegan tamales. They just show up out of nowhere, to save the day. And I'm so stoked. So I pull out the package, and I'm looking because I'm also gluten-free. I have a gluten-free intolerance and dairy-free as well. And so I pull out the vegan tamales, and nowhere on the package does it say gluten-free. So I start to panic a little bit. I pull out my smartphone, and I'm checking their website. No mention of gluten-free. Lo and behold, this poor guy who's stocking the frozen food section, bless him, because he doesn't know what's about to come for him. And I find him and I say, these vegan tamales, they don't say gluten-free, but are they gluten-free? He's like, most of our stuff that's going to be gluten-free, it's going to say gluten-free on there. If you have an intolerance, I wouldn't do it. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to show this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm getting these vegan tamales. Not only that, I'm going to get gluten-free chips. I'm going to get some guacamole and some salsa, and I'm going to make a Mexican meal out of it. So 30 minutes later, I'm still there with my basket. And this is what I've always done, I've always struggled with the ability to make a choice in the moment. And I'll get to that here in a little bit. And so finally, I'm having these doubts about the vegan tamales. And I trade out the vegan tamales for some bland soup and a little bit of avocado. And then I proceed to put the chips and the guacamole and the salsa and the vegan tamales back in their original places. But I wait until the guy who's stocking the frozen food section can't see me put back the vegan tamales, because I don't want him to have that win. So I'm checking out, and lo and behold, the lady who's going to be checking me out, she goes on break. Who takes her place? The guy who talked me out of the vegan tamales. And at this point, I was already losing my shit, right? So this story's kind of dragging on. I apologize, but I know you want to hear the end here. So he comes up and he makes the catastrophic mistake of asking if I found everything okay. And I said, actually, no, I didn't. You talked me out of my vegan tamales. I was headed home with my vegan tamales, but you talked me out of them because I've had these stomach issues, and I started just unleashing on him and becoming my story. All the stories that we tell ourselves about each and one of us that aren't true, that we assign to our worth and to ourselves. And lo and behold, I'm really getting into a rhythm here and kind of letting him have it. Doing it with a smile, of course, but he knows I mean business. And he doesn't miss a beat. He's like, wait a minute, you're that guy. And I said, yes, I am. Even the in-your-corner guy loses his shit every now and then over vegan tamales. But it got me thinking. It was a beautiful moment because it got me thinking that, I played the in-your-corner guy on TV. I've been doing it for a decade now. I'm 10 years this year. And people like to put me on this pedestal. They like to see me as this Cape Crusader, who are exposing the injustices and helping the less fortunate, the people who don't necessarily have the resources to help themselves. But at the end of the day, I'm just as two-legged as the next person. I'm the guy that is losing his shit over vegan tamales at the grocery store. And then it got me thinking that why do we put all this pressure on ourselves to be perfect? Why do we put on this pressure on ourselves to save everyone and to save everything and to save the planet? Just like the Buddha only saved one person, and that was himself. And when he saved himself, he saved the world. Because that's what it's about. It's about being yourself. It's about reconnecting with your body. It's about being in your body. It's about saying yes to your healings, living in your truth. And as Thich Nhat Hanh, he's one of my dudes, he's a Vietnamese monk. He talks about, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he talks about sitting down and having tea with everything. Sitting down and having tea with your own bigotry, with your own sexism, with your own prejudice, with your own racism, with your own fears, with all of it, all of that stuff that tyranny was talking about, that we suppress and that we continue to push down. All the stuff that then is taking control over our operating system, when in fact it's not our true self. It's not our self, which is actually tied to wherever we're from, right? Heaven, the dimensions, God, wherever that place is, that creativity that God originates from. That part of us is constantly intact. It's constantly in place. It can't be harmed. It was never damaged to begin with, right? We take on these layers as if they're our own, and yes, we're broken in the human sense, but at the core of who and what we are not broken. We are not broken. There are certain steps to take in order to heal, thus giving you an ability to be relatable to people. That's why I'm here. It's all brought me to this moment, like right here, right now. Like all those perceived negative experiences, that's what brought me to my healing. That's what helped me make sense of my past. That's what helped me make sense of my present and my future, which are all happening at the same time anyway. That's what brought me here to this moment with you. I recently had the privilege of connecting with a group of beautiful, brave souls on Northeast 23rd Street. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from here on the other side of the Capitol. Just a couple blocks or a mile away from where I live on 23rd Street. And these are someone's mother, someone's father, sister, brother, grandparent, child. Homeless. Homeless and living in tents. They are hungry, they are mentally ill, and they have been thrown away like a piece of trash. And we drive by them. I'm just as guilty of it too. We drive by them. Sometimes we treat them as a distraction. Sometimes we treat them as a nuisance. Sometimes we treat them as being invisible. Sometimes we roll down the window and we give them some money, we give them some change because we want to feel better about ourselves. And I mourn them. I mourn them deeply. I mourn any of those souls, any of those beings, any of those lives, those people who have been thrown away, who have been discarded, who have been abandoned, for whatever reason. They've fallen off the path, or karmically, or this is their path, or things have happened, that have gotten them to that point that they haven't been able to deal with it. Because as a traumatized society, it's like, what do? We can't think. We don't think. And then we enter into addictions. We have this pull to enter into addiction because it's the only way that we can survive. Something I struggled with, for a good chunk of my life. Real love, though, is that when we see something that is unacceptable, is that when we see the homeless person on the corner, or living in a tent, when we see something that is unacceptable, that we draw a line in the sand. And that we draw a line in the sand and we say, that is not okay. That is not okay, that is not acceptable, and I will not sit quiet. I will not stand still, I will do something about it. But before we can go there, we must go from here to here. And we must do the internal work. We must, first and foremost, we must forgive ourselves. And we must do something different. Only then can we truly put our feet and put our body and put our whole being where the hurt is. Only then can we truly make a statement from love. And only then can we truly affect real change. And the change starts here, but then it trickles out. It trickles out, and then it affects everyone under your roof. It affects everyone in your neighborhood, in your community. And then that trickles out. And then it affects everyone in the city. There's so much power. That's what I love about In Your Corner. It gives me this platform and this ability. And as I've done this healing, I've been on this spiritual awakening now for 7 years. And my healing journey has been very wild and wonderful, miraculous and full of wonder, but really intense and really painful. And so people who know me really well have experienced it, because I've isolated myself, at certain times, because that's the only way I could do it. But what I love about In Your Corner is there's energy, because we're all frequency. And so we're all vibrating. And really we talk about ascending, but really we're already ascended. But there's layers of trauma and different things that are pushing on us, that we're suppressing, that are really keeping us down from really stepping out and living, our authentic full self and showing our heart to the world. But what I love about In Your Corner and these stories, because there are so many negative stories, and the news, I got to be careful because I work for the news, so, but there is, and I'm being recorded, so okay, how do I put this? All right, so there's a lot of bad stuff that happens. And when we turn on the TV, right, when we turn on a podcast or the radio or the TV or just, having a conversation with someone, that experience, we are taking on that energy. So like when we're turning on the TV at certain hours of the day, we're taking on whatever they're speaking about. Like energetically, we, especially us who are empaths, it's like we're taking that on, and we're taking that on as our own. And so within Your Corner, I try to be very mindful about that and try to be very, very intentional with what I'm putting on the air, and then how that will be perceived and how that will be received by people who are seeing it. So I try and be as positive as possible. Sometimes, yes, the universe is asking for us to show up with a camera unannounced and to chase down someone in order to expose that person. But I try and just look at them like I do the person on 23rd Street, someone who's kind of veered off the path, who has had their own struggles, and for whatever reason, they've decided that this path, where they are at this moment in time, is their best path. And so I try to be mindful of that and talk to them just like a human being, as opposed to the ambush, the gotcha moment, and seeing them as the villain. So, see, I'm not even going on my script, and I get rambling. I apologize. So I used to be an emotional trauma hoarder. It didn't matter how major, how minor. It could be every slight. It could be every heartbreak. If someone looked at me a funny way, or I perceived them looking at me a funny way, I would just take it on, and I would internalize it, and I would take it on as my own. And work also, there was a lot I took home from my work at Channel 4 as well. I didn't feel safe to be I didn't feel safe in this world. I didn't feel safe to be a man in this world. I didn't feel safe to be a gay man in this world. After a lifetime of struggling with my sexuality, struggling with depression, I still struggle with some depression. PTSD has been very real in my life. Body distortion, struggling with my body image. I know that I think I saw a figure 90% of those struggling with their body typically are women, but many men do as well. Substance abuse. I was a binge drinker for over 10 years. I struggled with some really hardcore drugs in my 20s. Also chronic anxiety, chronic stress, chronic leaky gut, shoddy adrenals, low energy. All of it. That I'm sure many of you have also struggled with. That's changed though. That's changed through this journey, through this work, that I've been on. It wasn't easy. Learning to love myself has been the greatest obstacle for me to overcome. Dealing with the sexual abuse, the assault abuse by my high school counselor, shortly after I graduated high school, and then also struggling with my sexuality, learning to love myself. It was a real challenge. At 24, I found myself homeless. When I say homeless, I always had a safety net in my parents, even though I was ignoring my parents. I was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was unemployed. I was in major debt. I was struggling to come to terms with my sexuality. I wasn't staying in touch with family and friends. I lost my job. I was living on people's couches, really struggling, with alcohol and drugs and the different abuse. But there were several spiritual interventions that got me back to Oklahoma City, which of course, I brought all that stuff back with me because, I couldn't leave it behind. But this feeling arose in me that, my God, I am a mistake. Like I'm a mistake and I don't matter. And it doesn't matter. It's like I have the most loving family and friends, and you can have the most loving and family and friends, but it doesn't matter. When you take on that feeling, when that feeling arises inside of you, you start to believe it, and then every day you start to become it. And you lose yourself. You lose yourself, and you get disconnected with your body. So for the past 6 years, I've been on this spiritual rebirth, and really I've been going at it from a direction of going broke. I've been going broke with my healing, and I've been doing what most would perceive as a very alternative kind of approach to my healing, using many ancient rituals, also different ancient modalities, therapies that maybe you are familiar with, a number of things. So 3.5 years ago, I set out on a spiritual quest to become an Ironman. Are you familiar with an Ironman? Yes? So Ironman, 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, followed by a full marathon. And it's all back to back to back, which I completed. And but I was in way over my head. People thought I was nuts. They thought I was going to die, literally, because I was signed up for full Ironman before I owned a bike, before I knew how to swim, before I had run maybe longer than a 5K. But there was this pull. There was this pull that I could not ignore, right? And I was just getting the whole spirituality thing, and certain things were popping up, and synchronicities. I have a whole system in place with numbers and abbreviations and license plates. I can get into that later, not today. But for me, it was the beginning of the stripping down of the ego. So I was risking everything for everything. I didn't have a lick of experience, but there was this pull that was so great that I could not ignore it, and I couldn't see it, it wasn't tangible, but I could feel it. I could feel it in the depths of my bowel, the bowel of my being. And so I didn't question it. And so I started stripping down my ego. Well, it was just happening. And then I was humbled to my core. And when we are humbled to our core, that creates this fertile ground for a rebirth. Because when nothing changes, when we're not risking, let me take that back. When nothing changes, when we're not risking, nothing changes. And thus then we're not able to be that vehicle of light. We're not able to be that vehicle of light to invoke real change, real global change. Again, that starts with each of ourselves. We are here to bring massive change and growth, not only to our own life, but to the world. And the key is detaching from the idea of feeling emotionally safe, kind of like what Tierney was describing. It's the idea of detaching from feeling emotionally safe. It's saying yes to our healing, and at the same time, it's deciding that our happiness and that our joy and that our growth is more important than that false illusionary need to feel emotionally safe. So me, I've been fearless, and I've taken that same fierceness from the Ironman and I've applied it towards my healing and towards my spirituality. I haven't questioned it. Some things, people think I'm nuts with my spirituality and my healing as well, which I've learned to actually embrace. But I've put that same boldness towards my healing and done a number of things. I've done mostly, I eat fish, but a mostly plant-based diet that I found that's worked for me. What might work for me, maybe it's not going to work for you. Energy medicine, meditation, tantric work, which tantric work is all about sexuality and sensuality, but really it's about taking control of your body wisdom. It's about taking control of your body wisdom and experiencing things in your body once again. Because after struggling with abuse and different traumatic events, I've been detached, as many of us are, for so long. Muscle activation therapy, yoga and Pilates, sound and light therapies. I walked over hot coals in Florida. Ouch. Suffered a few second-degree burns, but I traveled to California to learn or to listen to a guy make whale noises with his mouth, which is a true story. But there's so much more to it, though, that he taught us how to use the human voice to create these tones and these overtone patterns, to balance your body and your mind and your being, and this stuff really works. Or I'm finding, in my experience, that it's really working. Months earlier, I found myself in California at another intensive with a number of strangers from all over the world. And we sat there in this room for 3 days, naked. That's right. And I say naked, yes. That's my son, I'm a Louisiana boy. That's my southern twang coming out in me. Naked, vulnerable, in front of a mirror at times, different exercises. But again, it was initially I was closed off to the idea, and all of these images and all these stories started creeping back into my field. But I didn't question it. There was this pull. I went for it, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. But it was very ritualistic, but it was all about learning to experience what it's like to live and be in your body again. So those are just a few examples, and I could go on and on. Probably some other things that are going to shock you even more than that. All right, I'm wrapping it up here. Okay, so what I have found that when we listen and we jump like the fool, we don't question it. We jump like the fool, and then we take inspired action. And then we also embrace the pain as our own healer. For the longest time, I was looking outside of myself. We're constantly looking outside of ourselves, right? We're thinking that this person this one person is going to save us and is going to bring us to the promised land. Not true. It starts here, you know. We're each our own savior in a sense, you know. The resurrection is happening within each of us. So my question to everyone here is, where are you risking everything? Where are you willing, right? Where are you willing to risk everything? Where are you willing to risk being open to the possibility of opening up your heart, right? The possibility. There's many of us who can't lean into life, you know, with our heart wide open because it doesn't feel safe. But what about the possibility? Just the possibility of loving yourself, the possibility of leaning in, right? Because the possibility is always there. You don't have to actually do it, but just know the possibility. And then the universe hears that. The universe hears that and says, okay, all right, this person right here, they're onto something, and I think they're being for real this time. Because we're each the co-creator. The universe hears or sees and hears what you're saying. You're the co-creator, right? You're co-creating your life. You're co-creating your experiences. And the universe is like, well, they're the co-creator, and I love them so much, and I trust them enough that I'm going to allow. And God, universe, who, insert whoever. I love them so much, but really, those experiences and those beliefs are very limiting. Those are very limiting. So it's getting ourselves out of the way and detaching from the idea or from the ideas of thinking that we know how it should be or what we're here to do or how we should be living our life, and just surrendering and trusting and allowing and then receiving the abundance and the prosperity, that life has to give us. But before we can do that, we must become a hollow reed. And then that allows Spirit, that allows God and the angels and the universe to manifest through us and to guide us and to direct us and then to create all of that abundance that's really already in your unmanifested world. Like that place where the creativity originates, like all those things that we're going to be creating, while we're down here, in these bodies. Like that stuff's already created, but it's time to access it. It's time to access it and to believe in yourself and to access it. Just being you. Like just being you, that is enough. Just being you and sharing that with the world. And knowing that you are a beacon of hope in the darkness. Just being you. It's that simple. And don't ever estimate the power of a smile. The power of a smile and just connecting with someone, right? Just connecting and looking at them like through their eyes and being like, oh, I see you. Like I see you. That is the recipe. We all have grace coming to us, but we all get the option to choose something different. That's the recipe right there, right? That's the recipe. Do something different. All you got to do is say yes. We get the choice. It really is. It really is that simple. And I'm still working with it. I'm still experimenting. I treat myself, my body, and this life as an experimentation. So I find what works, what doesn't work, what maybe increases, my light and helps with my vibration. Maybe there's some things that don't necessarily jive with me and that dim my light, and then now I'm sharing that with the world. So I'm super stoked that we're all here together, doing this thing together, connecting at a deeper level. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to show up and to just share my experiences with you. So thank you.